My hobby is collecting antique bottles, and it's not your most common hobby that people are aware of. I got started when I was about 9 years old, when I was doing what a lot of young boys do, and I was exploring an old barn that was built in the 1880s, and I found several old bottles stashed away in the sideboards of the barn. It was intriguing to me. I thought the old bottles were neat. Here I am, 45, almost 50 years later, still doing the same thing. One of the ways that I find them is also a little bit off the beaten path, and that's to find and excavate the pre-1900 outhouses. The outhouse became a receptacle for your everyday household garbage, including bottles. So if you have the knowledge to be able to find these, there are literally thousands and thousands of these still waiting to be unearthed. Some of the confusion that may come apart to the common layman that has no idea what you're doing, first of all, try and envision going up and asking someone permission to dig up the old outhouse. Not your everyday question. Many people, first of all, have no idea why you would be doing this, and when you explain the part about the bottles and the trash disposal, they kind of get the idea, but then there's always the thought of, why would you be digging in human waste? What you have to understand is 95% of the pits that we dig are before 1900, and everything is well decomposed. So when you get down there, you find that you're going to have a really rich soil with a heavy seed layer, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it's not any different than people that put animal manure on their gardens to make the gardens grow better. And I can tell you that that's a lot fresher than anything that we've ever dug down in these old pits. One of the things you have to do is try to put yourself in a frame of mind of how things were back in the mid to late 1800s or early 1900s, and you have to try to theorize where the outhouses may have been placed. You can also consult early city records, maps, and physically you can find them by probing for them, by using a spring steel probe, and simply by using feel and experience you can tell when you hit a hole that's been filled in with trash or refuse as opposed to the natural ground that you have. Once a pit's been located, you've got a couple objectives in mind. One is to excavate it and not damage any of the artifacts and have fun while doing that. The other objective is to leave the property in as good or better condition than when you found it. So in order to do this, we'll lay out tarps, we'll take out the sod, set the sod out separately. We will dig with hand tools, shovels, etc., until we get to the artifact layer. And once you get to the artifact layer, then the remainder of the hole is usually excavated with small hand tools. Once you've reached the bottom, it's usually an extremely hard clay layer. And then the hole's filled back in, it's tamped, sod's put back in place, and it's watered down if possible, and then raked up, and there's no mess, everything's cleaned up, and put the artifacts away safely, and you're on your way. You not only find bottles, but you find other artifacts as well. All of these things can lead you to a general assumption of what type of household was using these items. For instance, from the bones and the seed layer, you can get a general idea of their appetite, of the types of food that they ate, habits of the people, such as whiskey bottles. You can tell if they were a drinker. A number of medicine bottles might give you the indication that they had different ailments that were bothering them. You can tell that also. Doll heads indicate that they had girls. Marbles could be girls and boys. All of these things are fun to find and also help lead to speculation as to how these people lived. There are a lot of aspects of this hobby that I enjoy. I have several, quite a few actually, friends that I dig with. Two in particular that we share a lot of good times, a lot of fun times. It's fun when you have somebody you can share these experiences with, and it's like any hobby where you're pursuing something, you're going to have good days and bad days. So when you're having those bad days, you always have your friends to rely on for them to give you either a hard time or we can joke around. We have a good time no matter what we find. So there are days when we don't find anything and we still have a great time. Another thing that we do in this hobby that's greatly underappreciated is the number and amount of research that goes into this hobby. I personally have written 2 books, each over 600 pages, dealing with the historical record of these bottles from a particular state. So the research aspect is very important, and much of what we do is documented and is not done just for the flair or the prestige of it, which is actually a concept that's laughable because, again, it's a hobby that we enjoy. We do it because we enjoy it, being with our friends, and the research is just another enjoyable aspect of it. There's kind of an unwritten etiquette or set of rules that we like to abide by when digging these outhouses. First and foremost is to obtain permission. And there are many that do not, but this is number one priority, is you need to get permission. That's the first thing. Second thing is to make sure that you call the dig number for underground cables, buried utilities, etc. Another rule that we have is to leave the site as nice or better than when you found it. When the hole is done being excavated, it's all put back in its original state, and when we get done, 99% of the time people cannot tell where we've dug, and that's what we want. We like, and that's what keeps you digging in a certain town over and over again. People appreciate you taking care of the property, whether it's private residence or vacant lot. You know, I've had several pits where we've dug down to a depth of 10 feet and found absolutely nothing. So it's a lot of physical effort and for sometimes little or no reward. One of the neatest artifacts that we pulled out was a pair of brass knuckles, which that always leads to speculation of, all right, how did something like this end up in the bottom of an outhouse? So there's always a great story behind all of these finds, but when you find something unusual like the brass knuckles, it always is fun to speculate. It's like going fishing. You can't go out and catch a 10-pound bass every day. That's a rarity. So finding a really rare bottle is just as rare. Someday you may catch a small bluegill, someday you may catch a nice bass. It's the same way with digging. Someday you have good pits, and other days it's just not hardly worth the effort. But like I said, we're doing this for fun, and that's the whole point.